everyone. Welcome back to the CEO Post Podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. We are back on another installment of Mindset Mondays with my co-host, Justin Thorstad.
Progress wild.
Shh, Justin. Yay, Justin, he's the man. All right. So
I was promised sound effects.
Yeah, exactly. I delivered.
That's not what I had in mind.
Well, I mean, you got sound effects. So we're gonna talk about fear. Let's tackle the topic of fear, okay? And it may be cliche, or maybe you hear it in you know every other podcast out there and whatnot. But we're gonna take somewhat of a different perspective on the topic, the concept, and the fallacy of what is fear. Okay, we're gonna talk about how it creates, you know, a stereotype of behaviors, how you have, you know, having that certain awareness of the story that you're telling yourself can come in and then give you a better perspective and then really do away with that fear.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Let's dive right into it, brother.
Sweet. So, you know, again, as cliche as a lot of people talk about fear, I think there's a couple really valid and critical points to make. Like, first of all, fear being an acronym for false evidence appearing real.
Right.
Because that's really all it is, right? Like, what is fear? Because there's a difference between fear and danger, right?
Yeah.
Danger is there's a bear, you're about to get eaten, your life's in danger, right? Whereas fear is a false story that's coming up. And if you pay attention, like, you notice that those stories are habitual. Like, there's a pattern to it. It's a redundant set of thoughts, feelings, behaviors that are run by those stories. And, like, what is the level of conscious awareness you have of yourself and those stories, and can you catch them faster? But I think most importantly, too, like, the thing about fear in those stories is there's a really important statement I heard a long time ago, and I think we've talked about it a few times on these episodes, is that all results, all of them, are predictable, even spontaneous, based upon the conversation you have with yourself before you get into action.
Yeah.
And so if the story comes up like, uh-oh, what if I choke? What if I'm not enough? What if people, right? All these different types of things. What is your state of being? How are you thinking and behaving and feeling when you get into that behavior of action? Is it trepidatious? Is it timid? Is it with, like, holding back? And, you know, in real estate investing, you go and meet with that seller to negotiate a deal, and you're full of fear. You're full of these false stories and what you think is going to happen, what you think they're going to say in order to shut it down. You walk in there with that energy, and this person's like, I don't know if I trust this person. Something's off.
Yeah.
And they may not have that conscious awareness to put it into language.
But the energy's coming through.
Totally.
Energy's coming through.
Yeah.
So it manifests in a lack of confidence, right? When you're in that kind of scenario. But it also manifests in we create storms inside our heads. Fear, it's all theoretical, right? It's false evidence appearing real, but it's all theoretical. So we start thinking and pulling on threads of, oh shit, what if this happens? And then asking yourself what the what if question in the bad context can be a dangerous thing, because you start to create this imagery of possibilities, right? Well, what if I go broke? What if that, you know, what if I don't make it? What if I don't have what it takes? What if I'm not worthy? What if people don't like me? What if so? All these things start to pile up and create this big image of whatever the outcome of what you're doing, you know, could be, right? But at the end of the day, like, most of that stuff is irrational fears. Like
Absolutely.
you said, huge difference between real danger and then fears, irrational fears specifically.
Yeah,
So,
a false story,
Yeah.
right? And so, you know, a lot of agents I talk to, they're like, you know, and maybe same for you, the people that you coach, right?
Yeah.
Like going and talking to that seller that's a potential lead, and they're already making up a story about what they're going to say and shoot it down and how they're going to say no, why they're going to say no. And it's like, my most favorite question that I used to ask myself when I would let fear overrun me is very simply, not what if the story's real, but this important question. What if my story is full of shit? What if it's completely wrong?
Yeah.
Now what? Now I'm free. Like,
That's
the
asking what
shackles-
if in the right context.
Yeah, exactly. And the
It's
shackles are
challenging,
released, and I'm free to go
Yeah.
be and allow the process to unfold.
Right.
Right? Like, what if you just change your internal representation to fear? Like, here's what I mean by this. So, you know, we're unpacking all of this and giving people a new context and new content to reframe their internal representation to fear. And that's all good and great for awareness. But now what are you going to do with it?
Right.
And so the doing part, what has served me the best in restructuring my relationship to fear is this. If I feel that fear come up, Now it's a friend. It's an ally.
Yeah.
Because it's pointing me in the direction of like, there's something there that's still holding me back. Great. So guess what? Now,
That's a very interesting perspective,
Yeah,
man, on
so
how to take that.
now this isn't going to hold me back. Now this is a beacon pointing me to go in that direction to transcend, to overcome that fear. So now I'm going to utilize this story as an opportunity to practice courage, to practice being brave. Because it's not about being fearless. Like there was that clothing line back in the 90s about fearless. It's like being fearless is bullshit. And I don't care what book you read and who said it. Being fearless is bullshit. We all have
man,
it.
100%, I agree with you.
Yeah. Now,
100%.
the key is, how do I become courageous?
Yeah.
Because courage just means feeling the fear and doing it anyways. Like acting in the face of it to transcend it, to show yourself through new evidence that story was full of shit.
Yeah.
Right? And that's going to take some action. But most people don't get into action because they're identifying with the fear as if it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you just get into action in the face of that fear anyways? And one of the most important quotes I ever heard that stuck with me forever is, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." So there's something in there that you're scared of that you would back away from. But the truth of the matter is, if you go in there and you confront it and you overcome it, because you will, just by being in action, there's going to be an end result no matter what it is. And if you're not attached to it, like your worthiness is not on the line, you know what I mean? And you just confront it, what's on the other end of that is called the life of your dreams. I mean, that's where it exists, not within your fear story, because if it existed in your fear story, you'd already be realizing it.
So if you want to take that to like a psychological effect, right? What happens in your psyche? What happens in your thought process? On the other side of that fear, once you conquer it, once you handle it, and this is crazy. My 10-year-old boy was telling me, I got to face. I don't know where he picked it up the other day. I mean, some YouTube video or something like that, because I didn't tell him that. But I wish I had. But we were talking about heights. I think it was just heights. And he goes, and I asked him, like, are you willing to do this? I mean, I'll do it if you do it. And I can't remember what was it. I can't remember what was it, but it was something heights related. And he goes, "Yeah, I gotta face my fears, right?" I was like, oh shit. He's 10 years old. He's telling me he's gotta face his fears. Like, okay, that's amazing. First off, and then Castles and Coasters. We were at Castles and Coasters. So it's a theme park, right? We're at a theme park and we're talking about heights and this ride that goes up and down and whatnot. And he's saying, "Yeah, I gotta face my fears." I was like, all right, shit. I mean, I'm afraid of that. Like, you know what I mean? So we went along with it. And did the thing, and what was on the other side of that fear? 2 seconds later, after getting off, I mean, he was the cockiest little 10-year-old that you can come across. Awesome. He was confidence level just boosted, through the roof, and the dopamine hit. You know what I mean? Like he was elated that he conquered a fear. He was able to do something. Confidence levels went up, right? But that's what happens. It breaks your thought process. Once you go through that fear barrier, which most of the time it's going to be rational fears anyways, right? It's a result of that story that we're telling ourselves, that pulling on threads, on asking ourselves what ifs. And then creating this imagery of what could happen that's ends up being this fictitious novel in our brain.
Absolutely.
But when you break through that and actually put action into the mix, and you get through whatever that fear, that barrier is, on the other side of that, it's the life you want, right?
Totally.
In the sense of confidence, in the sense of achievement, in the sense of personal power. I mean, personal power is huge. Exactly. Yeah. Self-respect. You're taking back whatever power, whatever right you gave that fear to control over you.
Well, you just said it, and I think people really need to understand the gravity of what you just said. We gave our power away. You gave it away to a story, right? As if it's somehow true, yet it's fictitious. And so when you transcend that thing, when you face that fear and realize that you are more courageous, you're more brave than you knew, you're taking that power back. Right. Now what the hell are you going to go do?
Yeah.
Now what are you going to go confront? Because you're in that state of dopamine, you're in that state of confidence, self-respect, like loving yourself enough to know, I did that, now I can do something else. Yeah. And you can make forward progress. You can make movement towards realizing your dreams and goals and ambitions, if I can talk today.
Exactly. And then you also have the evolution of fear, right? How you transcend it. As you start knocking out these fear benchmarks, I don't know, to call them something, right? You evolve as an individual. The stuff that I used to be afraid of 10 years ago, I mean, right now it feels like a joke.
Yeah.
It's like, why, man? Why would I get bottled up in all these things, or get analysis paralysis because of the fear that I was feeling to, I don't know, social rejection, the type of stuff that happened years ago, and when as you start plowing these fears that come at you one by one, you start to just level up and step up your confidence,
Yes.
right? 2, your belief in yourself. 3, your skill set. Your skin gets thicker. You're able to handle more and tackle more stuff, right? The sense of achievement just goes higher. But
Absolutely.
if you stop at the first sight of fear, I mean, it's like they say in France, you're fucked.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that fear
French,
is,
right?
yeah, you're fucked. Yeah, that's French, totally.
It's French.
But what's worse is now that fear is what's running the show.
Yeah.
You're no longer in control.
Yep.
So you've given your power away to it. But here's the other thing that I've noticed too, and I know you can relate to this. As you start confronting those fears and you start moving forward in business, you have new levels of success, yes?
Right.
And then this is why I say success is a shitty teacher, because the more successes you have, when it comes time to adjust to the market or pivot your business and go another direction or start a new business, all of a sudden those old fears can come back up again and you can start to be consumed by it. Why? You've been out of practice. You haven't sat with those fears in some time. And so you forgot, you're not resourced in how to address them. And so people often get taken down by that. When they pivot their business and go another direction, that fear comes up, like, what if this, what if that, what if, and all of that, and they get lost in it, and it can take them down, and they can actually fail in that new venture. And what I'll say is this: when that fear comes back up because you've had success for so long and you've been out of practice and confronting fears, why don't you just welcome it? Welcome it as an ally, as like an old friend that just came back to visit, and say, thank you for showing up today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this opportunity to practice yet another level of this fear that I get to transcend. Because what's going to be possible on the other side of this?
Yeah.
And without that ability to practice. Because here's the thing about it. Like, if you're so one-dimensional that you're succeeding in business and you're working on these things, what about the other facets of life? We have fears in our relationships with our significant other, maybe with our kids, as far as our ability and capability in being a father, a mother, whatever the case is. Like, you have this level of awareness in every facet of life, and they're not all the same. They
Right.
can be in different levels, right? So all of these opportunities are just that. You get to practice transcending these things and build that courage, because that will spill over into other facets of life. And what a beautiful opportunity.
You're right. It is a beautiful opportunity to transcend, right? To grow, to be more from a higher level, from a higher space.
Yeah.
Now, you said something very important, which is the awareness of the story. The awareness of the story, and I think this goes very well hand in hand with hitting certain thresholds of success. When you hit a new threshold of success, for example, I just had a couple of students, and I was mentioning this right before we started, but I had a couple of students who hit, they just closed a deal for $113,000, right? I mean, it's a big game changer type of deal.
Sure.
You're not used to that kind of money, and you're used to making $40,000, $50,000 a month, or I'm sorry, a year, or $60,000 a year, whatever. Getting a one lump sum of that that amount of cash, it's gonna do something, right?
Yeah, the ego comes out to play.
Yeah, here's what happened. Here's what happened. So, there was fear initially, and I'll use this track record just for the sake of an example, right? But there was fear initially about, and this is going back to the transcendence of and the evolution of fear. There was fear initially about having conversations with people who didn't know. These students, they're my wholesaling students, so I teach them how to wholesale. And they had a fear about talking to people at first, how to negotiate, how to do that kind of stuff. Boom, they broke through that. And then they had a fear about just reaching out and then spending money on marketing and doing what they had to do, and then boom, they broke through that. So you see this stage of development just happening one after another. Boom, 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 boom. Now they were humming for a while, and then boom, they got hit with a big success. And like all of a sudden, they forgot everything that they had learned over the last year. Yeah, about managing fear, managing the what happens. Fear loss creeped in, right? So fear of loss creeped in, and it never goes away. I mean, it goes back to your comment earlier. It's about having that awareness of story. What's the story that we're telling ourselves at any point in time?
Yeah.
They like fear of loss wasn't even part of it. I mean, they were already investing in the business. They were taking action, doing things, here. And then next thing you know, they got hit with a really good thing. It's not a bad thing. So it's not something that's gonna kill them, right? It's something that's gonna change their life for the better. Yet, boom, still like big fat injection of fear, just
Totally
swooped in, and it's fear of loss. Fear of loss. If you're not in that space of awareness and you don't catch yourself telling yourself the stories. That can bring back fears from the past, or just automatic thinking, default thinking back into that space where you're at. You can put yourself in a lot of trouble, right?
Yeah, totally.
What happens is like fear of loss. They came in. It was like we had a conversation about that. Like, no, you don't have to worry about it. Just be smart about how you allocate the funds or whatever. So we took it back to to pragmatic stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then boom, they went on to doing their thing. The regular stuff that works.
Well, so. I got an excellent story about this fear of loss. So, obviously I've been through a lot of fear, self-imposed limitations and stories, when I was a single agent to decide to start a team. And then that became successful. I overcame those fears. I mean, I had a fear of talking in front of my team that in 90 days, when I said I was going to build a team, to 90 days, my 90-day goal was to hire 5 agents, terrified. Had no idea how to do that. Ended up hiring 6. And then doing team meetings. What the hell am I going to say? Why would they follow me?
Yeah.
All these things, right? And then 3 years, that team just massive success. And so, start a brokerage. That time I was going through a divorce, sold a rental property, and I used that to basically disassemble the team and start a brokerage and go all in, like single focused. And so, it was a pretty large sum of money that I got from my investment property. I used that to fund the business, to get everything up and running. And I remember talking to my buddy Justin, and I'm like, man, what if I fail? What if I suck? What if it just all implodes and I go bankrupt? Yeah. And he just looked me dead in the eye. He goes, so what if it does? What's the worst case scenario?
Yeah.
You lose everything. You got to sleep on my couch for 90 days. We'll get you a bicycle, and then you figure out what's next. That's the worst case scenario, right? Yeah, that would be terrible. He said, can you live with that? And I sat there for a minute. And I was like, okay. And I put myself literally laying on his couch with a blanket, owning nothing, having a bicycle, and having to start all over from scratch.
Yeah.
And I just accepted it. Like that was a reality. It's like, if that's the worst case scenario, and I can accept that, what else do I got to fear?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to allow that to happen. And let me start resourcing myself with a new story that's the opposite of the fear. I am capable. Look, I just built a team. This is just a larger team. And start resourcing yourself with what to be, to be true and factual, or at least a potential reality. Because, man, if you can envision it in your imagination, by definition, that realization already exists in the quantum field, and you can pull it into reality. That's how everything's created, through the imagination.
Yeah,
right?
Everything's a thought first.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are you going to focus on? The false evidence appearing real, or your vision of the future? Because energy flows where attention goes, and you cannot be a slave to 2 masters. So choose wisely which one you're going to pick and feed with your attention, your consciousness, and continue to feed that. That's not to say that you won't, on occasion, find yourself slipping into feeding the fear. Yes, you will. But it's how quick can you notice it and then shift to where you want to go. Are you resourcing yourself with other like-minded individuals that are going to support you when you are down, when you don't feel you have the energy to make that shift and to put your consciousness where you want to go? Because you are in that beat-up mode. You reach out for support and you're like, I'm in my shit. Help me out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it takes a village. And who you surround yourself with matters.
100%, man. I can't count the times that I would have gotten stuck and really just put a dead stop to anything that I was doing if I didn't have that that support there.
Yeah.
So,
well, our men's mastermind coffees in the morning. That's the time to unpack. Like, I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that.
Every time I say, and a little bit of context on that, we've been getting together for breakfast. For what, last 5-6 years?
Yeah, at least 5.
Yeah, something like that. And it's once every couple of weeks we get together, there's 5 of us, and we just start having conversations about how we're doing at a personal level. Sometimes we'll throw in professional stuff. We do a lot of mindset, but I think more importantly, we have the knowledge now that between that little group, that little support structure, we have each other's backs, right? That's one. And then we don't deal with bullshit. If we start having a conversation, we start smelling bullshit, like somebody's just, putting together a story that's not necessarily there.
Yeah.
This group in particular, and big shout out to the guys. It's we're really good about just putting ourselves out there. Front and center, right? Okay, calling bullshit on on each other, but it works, right? So that holds a space of responsibility. It's not coming from a space of being an antagonistic, prick when it comes to friendship.
Except for Jason.
Except for Jason. Jason's like that.
Kidding.
But no, it's really coming from a space of love and support. It's about being a mirror for each other, right? So find a spot, which this kind of takes me to what I want to talk about right now, which was how do you deal with fear when you're getting stopped on your tracks by something that you're afraid of. How do you deal with it? To me, the approach is, and it's easier said than done, right? But it's you break it down into consumable actions. There's got to be action behind everything that that you want to do, right? If you sit there and then just contemplate and theorize and dream about stuff, it's gonna sit there. The fear is you're gonna find. Trust me, you're gonna find threads to pull on that are gonna turn that fear into 10 times worse than whatever it looks like right now, right? So start taking actions to knock those little things and make it consumable. For example, I don't know if you want to. One I can go back to first time I ever did a keynote speech at a conference, right? You're talking to 800 people on there. I'd never spoken on stage, and then I was gonna it's scary, right?
Yeah.
So what did I do? Like, okay, step number one, start practicing. I didn't even have a presentation yet, right? But I just started talking to myself in the mirror, just making it easy to just kind of baby steps. Step two, start putting together the topic that I was going to talk about, dial it in, and then repeat it. Step three was repeat. Anyways, I started working on this fear for, I don't know, maybe 3-4 weeks before I was even on stage. By the time I got on stage, I still felt like super nervous, and the fear was still there, but I had some control over my personal power of how I could handle it, right? I was running it. It was not running me. It doesn't mean that it went away.
Right.
I brought it up, made it my friend, just like you said earlier, and then I used it to get to that.
I think the key is if you can get that fear to just subside enough to get your head above the water, so to speak, so you can breathe. It doesn't mean it went away by any means. You're still in it, but enough to become aware and conscious and decide. And through true choice, what you want and where you're going and why you're going there.
Yep, absolutely. So that's my step one. It's break it down into bite-sized pieces. Number two is get a support structure. Find out, and if you don't have masterminds or you don't have people around you that kind of think the same way or are able to just come in then pick you up when you're feeling low or just put you in your place when you're calling bullshit on yourself. Go to books or find a way to just start thinking differently. Right, that's the thing. A lot of times we can't. It's hard to do that by yourself. It's hard to sit there and then, okay, how can I think differently about this particular problem? Unless you're consuming different context, you're looking at different perspectives. Books will do that to you. Seminars, trainings, good positive podcasts and stuff like that will do that kind of stuff too.
Absolutely.
To me, nothing beats one-to-one contact. Right, one-to-one relationship with somebody else where you're completely transparent and vulnerable. That really puts everything on the table. So, but finding a support structure is number two. And then three, always be growing. Always understand that you're graduating fears. You knock one out and then boom, that's elementary. And then maybe you get another fear that's like junior high or whatever. And then you get another fear that, like, shit, this feels more like high school. But then you graduate to college and university fears and whatever. So it's just, you're graduating fears. Fear is never going to go away. So if you let it stop you now, you pretty much let it stop for the rest of your life.
Yeah, well, and
it's
I think
never gonna
because
go
it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The more you back away from it,
Yeah.
the more you just give your power to it, feeding it, and now it grows bigger, and you're powerless, it's powerful, right? So you just got to decide, am I the one witnessing this dynamic, or am I the slave to it?
Yep. Beautiful.
Excellent.
So, I think we tackled a lot of the stuff that I wanted to say. Is there anything else you want to add?
I think that about sums it up. I mean, it's that simple, not easy, but the steps, the simplicity of it all. If you would just practice that.
Yeah. And again, practice, man. It's practicing beating the fear. Isn't that crazy?
Well, practice
I know I didn't learn
mastery,
that in school.
right? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's one thing to take it from a conscious concept. It's a whole nother thing to now implement it so that you can master.
Yeah, 100%. All right, fam. So hopefully you like that. IG fam, thank you so much for hanging with us. And where can they find you, Justin?
Anywhere on social media, Justin Thorstad or justinthorstad.com. Also, cell number 602-348-8534.
You know, at any point in time, you're gonna start to get hammered with phone calls, right?
Hey, don't threaten me with a good time.
Love it. Also,
Love
Libertas Real Estate, the brokerage, right?
Yeah, Libertas Real Estate.
So, all right, and you can find me at Rafael Cortez, CEO, on all the social media platforms. YouTube channel, drop a lot of content on there. So do me a big favor, if you haven't followed yet on social media, if you haven't followed the channel or haven't followed CEO Pulse podcast, drop a like, share it. There's a lot of value that I think we can put out there, right, as a collective. And for that kind of stuff, we need your help. So you can find me at Rafael Cortez, CEO, everywhere. And we'll catch you on the next one. Until then, stay focused. You got this.
Thanks, everybody.
Boom. Let's go.